Good evening. We'll call to order tonight's meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission for Wednesday, January 20th, 2016. Members of the public wishing to address Planning Commission on items appearing on tonight's agenda are requested to complete a speaker's card and file it with the secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the commission, not the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all the attendants are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. Roll call, Sherry.
Nicklin, absent. Merck.
Here.
Jagiello.
Here.
Isabella.
Here.
Vice Chair Nolan.
Here.
Chair Foster.
Here.
Lajowski.
Here.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first item on tonight's agenda is to extend the selection of the Planning Commission chairperson and vice chairperson. So I'm going to turn that over to staff and let them explain that.
Okay, so normally, good evening, everyone. Normally, this time of year, we ask you to make a selection of the Planning Commission chair and vice chair. However, I think it was maybe in the past 2 years, they have changed the time of which the actual commissioners are appointed from a December to a May. And normally these selection of chair and vice chair follow along with those patterns. You know, once the terms are up and you've appointed new people or reappointed the same people, then you choose the chair. And so as you see in the back of this staff report, there's a little listing of everyone and when their term expires. And you'll see that it now goes to May, I guess, 22nd or 24th, depending on who you are. I'm not really sure why it's different, but so we have, different years. Okay, so we have 3 people whose terms are expiring in May this year. And so at that point, then if they're reappointed or someone's newly appointed, then we ask that the chair be done at that time, which is the normal progression. It's just, I think, complementing what was done 2 years ago when they moved it from December to May. However, if you choose to, there's nothing wrong if you want to elect them. It's just that's, we're kind of trying to get it in line. Is all we were trying to do. So I'm open for any questions or anything that you might have.
So, can you remind me how the selection typically takes place? Is it usually the chair and the mayor, or is it how does?
So right now, my understanding is there's some talk at City Council about changing that process. I don't think that's occurred yet. So Matt might want to talk about it. I don't really know how it's done. It just happens without really my input, and I think it's. Chair, maybe Foster.
Yeah, typically it's the discussion passes amongst the planning commissioners, and they just determine who's going to be the vice chair the coming year.
Yeah, he's.
I am.
Chair Foster. He's talking about appointing a planning commissioner.
Oh, the appointment of a planning commissioner.
Or renewing a commissioner's term.
Which is a reappointment.
Okay.
Which is a reappointment, correct, Commissioner Nolan?
Sorry about that.
And yeah, I think the council will be considering whether to change the commission appointment process at some point. They obviously haven't had that discussion yet, so no changes have yet been made. At the moment, my understanding of the general practice is that the chair and the mayor review applicants and recommendations. The mayor makes an appointment, subject to confirmation by the council. In the end, it takes a council vote to appoint a commissioner. I'm not the council hasn't yet considered if they want to change that process, so I can't opine on changes. But that's the current practice. The key, of course, is council vote in the end.
And the only other thing I'll add to that is that, there's a certain mix of commissioners, right? There's some from in town, some from out of town, and then there's some, and I think it might actually be identified in the staff report, but there are some parameters. So they would have to be, those would have to be met. So I think currently right now, I think we might have 3 planning commissioners that are from out of town. So,
Those requirements are set by the code, which could also be changed by the council through the appropriate process. And I believe the requirements are, in addition to the requirement is that there be no more than 3 non-residents of the city, so that the quorum is residents of the city, and that the members have a qualification in certain relevant professional categories: architect, landscape designer, real estate professional, contractor, builder, that kind of thing.
so I'll add one more thing. Also, we talked about this yesterday in our directors meeting, that I have had 2 HPC commissioners resign from the Historic Preservation Commission, and the city clerk was asked to advertise for those, and she was instructed to advertise as the process is right now, not to wait to the new process. But it does take some time, to advertise and have it open. I don't know, Sherry, do you know how long that advertisement's normally open? So, so just to let you know, we are advertising for those positions.
I can jump in here. Our 3 newest commissioners were appointed when I was the chair, and I met with Mayor Strobel, and we actually had a public meeting. We agendized it. We invited the public to come in, and we actually had half a dozen people from the public who sat in and watched the process. And we interviewed, I don't know, we had 5 or 6 people for each position that came up. And we did that 3 times, and it went very well. And I think, Kathleen, the requirement is there needs to be 1 architect, 1 landscape architect, and 1 general contractor in the mix of the planning commission. But the rest of the commissioners can be anybody. It doesn't have to be any particular qualification. I mean, we've had people on the commission that were housewives and ex-professors and things like that. So it can be anybody.
All right. Any additional comments then? Okay, so I do have a speaker card from Councilman Wyrick. I think it pertains to this agenda. Would you like to come forward?
Yeah, I just want to just to state some facts, just to make sure. I read the staff report and a couple things I wanted to mention just to fill in the record. Number 1, the ordinance that established the new system was passed. It was effective August 22nd of 2014. That was the date that is shown as the effective date for this. And what happened was that for terms scheduled to expire on December 31st, 2015, they were extended to the 2nd week in May of 16. Okay, it's just, getting all that correct. And and also just I wanted to point out that the extension into June would be past the expiration date of the 3 terms that are ending in May, the 2nd meeting in May. Just point that out for the record. I believe it would be about 2 weeks after. The extension would be about 2 weeks after the
Right,
end of the term.
It's meant to be after the new people are appointed.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just pointing that out for the record. It's about
And the term controls.
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying for the record that's the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're completely right, Councilman Wyrick.
Right.
One more point to note: the chair does not control; the term controls. So if someone whose term is up come May 24th, 2016, is selected as or is currently the chair, I'm not sure. Yeah, for example, Chair Foster, your term is up May 24th, so you would be off the commission come May 24th, unless, of course, the council acted to reappoint you. I'm not commenting on whether they do or not. But if that was the case,
It's just the technical mechanics.
then you would cease to be on the commission, so the chair would be vacant. In other words, an action to extend the chairs does not trump the term length. Term length controls.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
I
Just to be,
wasn't
I
sure if
just
that
want
was
to be
clear or
absolutely
not.
clear about the mechanics, that's all. Okay. And the other thing, Commissioner Merck, I don't think you're correct. The code does not specify separate, one has to be general contractor, one has to be landscape architect, one has to be architect. There is a requirement for a licensed architect, and then there are a series of requirements for at least 2 of the other positions that are a number of requirements that are in addition to those particular types of experiences. So the only actual license requirement is architect. The others are not license requirements in the code. They are listed as the kind of things that we are looking for. So I wanted to correct that record. Okay?
Could
Other than that,
change
that's all I'm
sometime
here for.
Okay.
Okay?
So does this kind of lean us towards, if there's going to be the actual changing of the chair in June, obviously we'd have to come up with our suggestions, who's going to take the follow-up as chair. That would happen the session or two before, correct? Is that something that the
Well,
timing
So the,
would affect?
so the intent of postponing it until after the new people come on is to allow the new people to determine the chair. You know, that was, you know, this was in consult with the city manager. When you have an election in November, we don't seat the new, you know, when it was an appointed mayor, not an elected mayor like we have now. They didn't appoint the mayor until after everyone's seated. That's just how it normally goes. That's normally the process. So the idea is not to extend people's terms that are expiring, but when there's a new seated commission, to allow those people to appoint from their ranks. But, you know, like I said, it was just trying to get the processes in alignment with one another. But if you want to move the date, then that would be fine, but you would have people who would be terming out, making the decision to who would be chair. Or could
Right.
possibly, I shouldn't say might, could possibly be those people determining who would be chair.
Okay, well, I guess it's something, it sounds like to me that it's something we can deal with as we get down the road on it a little bit, you know, and.
Yeah, it was, I think that what we were just asking for is that, you know, do they need to approve an extension of the chair then, since, to a date certain, or just?
You can take two options. Either way, I would recommend taking it as a minute action with a motion, a second, and a vote. One would be to extend the chairs until after the expiration of the current terms that have expired, and any new commissioners, if appointed, are seated, which would allow, it would, in the default to what Kathy was explaining is the goal, to allow the new commission to select its new chair. Alternatively, you could set chairs the chair and vice chair will be extended through this date selected, June 15th, which is the second meeting in June, with the understanding, of course, that if one of the current chair or vice chair is not reappointed, and again, I'm not saying that will happen, that's all the council, then that position would be vacant for that first meeting in June, under the expectation that the council may likely have appointments already in place for the expiring terms by the expiration of the term, but they may not have that done yet.
Question.
Oh, thank you, pointing out that the vice chair is not up for renewal. So then if Chair Foster is not reappointed, then that would go to,
I'm sorry?
I understand that the vice chair's term is not up for reappointment, so if your term was not reappointed, Chair Foster, then simply Vice Chair Nolan
Vice Chair
would run the first meeting in June until the chair is selected. So I think as a practical matter, there's not that much difference as a matter of who chairs the meeting in June and the first half of the meeting in June 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all in part dependent on when the council makes its selections. The council may make its selections ahead of the May 24th expiration date, such that there would slide right in and there'd be no gaps.
Right.
But again, we're not sure how the council will work that.
So the way to go about this is to make a motion of a recommendation to adopt what is essentially written out.
Yeah, I think it's just
Chair.
it would be a motion to extend the current chair and vice chair as chair and vice chair through June 15th, 2016, or the expiration of their terms.
Okay. Well, I'll make that motion to adopt this. Absolutely.
So I'm just trying to understand the logic of, let's say let's say these three people term out. Then you have three new people. I mean, who knows better than the people who've been sitting here? Who's better qualified or able to chair a meeting than people who've been sitting here time after time? I don't get the logic of, I mean, I do get the logic, but in the sense that you have three new people and that's who they're going to be working with, but those three people are not going to be as knowledgeable as the people sitting here. So that's I'm just wondering.
Like I said, mine was just a procedural issue, bringing it forward because, again, you know, we have to do the chairs and vice chairs with all the commissions and boards at this time of year. And it was brought out, you know, when I asked for the terms and who was terming out, I noticed right off the bat that they were terming out at an odd point in time, May, not December. And so in discussion, it had nothing specifically to do with, you know, other than it's just standard policy to normally do it after everyone's appointed or elected, as the case may be. This is the exact same staff report that I did for the HPC, the same philosophy. So like I pointed out at the very beginning of my presentation, you can go ahead and do it now. There's nothing prohibiting you from doing it. We were just trying to move all the policies because at some point, you know, they're out of alignment. So at some point, they'll have to be brought in one way or another. Because you're either appointing a chairperson, they're terming it. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe they wouldn't have to be. So I'll stand corrected. Maybe they could always be off kilter like that. But that was the thought. Just procedural.
Well, I'm fine stepping back. So,
I'm going to have to agree with Rosalie on this one. I don't think it'd be a bad thing. I mean, even if terms ended or whatnot, or somebody, I don't know, it was midway through, and if we elected or nominated a new chair tonight, and I don't know. I just think that I don't see a need to do this.
Or at least push it off a month or something to think about it a little bit more. I just feel like
Yeah,
I didn't.
Can we do that?
I mean,
Can
yeah,
we put this on next meeting's agenda to,
Certainly.
I'm just wondering if,
think about it a little more.
So you would like it agendized to select a chair and vice chair then, in lieu of the way it's currently agendized, which is extend selection.
I would, I mean, just from my point of view, I would say maybe put it on the agenda for next time to decide whether or not we want to extend it
Okay.
or extend it to June or.
Some other date. Just open it for discussion, a general discussion.
Yeah, just.
Excellent.
or with the option that we could nominate or appoint new positions at the following meeting.
I was going to suggest.
We do one or the
It
other.
might be simpler if we agendize the next item to both allow for extending selection or selection of a new chair and vice chair. That way you would not have to wait another meeting to do
Okay.
something.
Right.
And it wouldn't preclude you from picking either of those options. Tonight, the agenda item is extend selection. You would not be able to select the chair directly tonight. It wasn't on.
Right.
That wasn't our agenda. We can rewrite that for next time.
Options, okay?
Do we need to make a motion, or is that just good enough?
I don't think you need a motion, just to direct staff to bring it back next.
Right, let's do that. I think we're all in agreement with staff and what was just talked about, so we can put it on the next agenda's meeting for discussion.
Bring it back next time. Continue.
Okay?
Continue. Microphone now, sorry. Continue it with the direction to staff to add the second option to the agenda item. That's how I understand the direction. And that I
Agreed.
don't think requires a formal
Agreed.
motion.
Okay. Okay. Now we're at public communications, which, as mentioned earlier, is a time we set aside during the planning commission meeting for members of the public to address the commission on items of city business other than those scheduled on tonight's agenda. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the commission and will generally be referred to staff and/or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. So I do not have before me any additional speakers cards, but if anyone's out there would like to come forward and speak during our public communication time, you're more than welcome. Okay, guess not. So then let's move on to consent items. Minutes of our regular meeting for the Planning Commission, November 18th. Also Planning Commission minutes for December 2nd, and minutes of our regular meeting of the Planning Commission for December 16th. Is there any discussion on that, commissioners? If not, we'll need a motion for approval.
I'll move we approve all 3 of these minutes.
I will second the motion.
Roll call?
So if you have to abstain, like
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Do we need to itemize
yellow,
them?
you can just say you abstain from number 2, the item number 3 or whatever. So, okay. So Merck,
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
Jagiello,
I'm not sure.
you're gonna,
18.
you can
No,
approve number
18,
2 and
2,
abstain for
16.
number
Which one
3.
was I not here for?
For number 3.
Okay, so I abstained from number 3 and yay to the other 2.
Okay. Zabella,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Foster.
Yes?
Wojciechowski.
Uh,
You're abstaining from the last one.
Yes, but I'll abstain from number 3.
Number 3 as
3.
well.
Well,
Number 4 is what one you're abstaining from. You were absent December 16th.
yeah, that was just the last meeting of the year.
Yeah, that's number 4.
Oh,
On the consent item, yeah.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah, it's a little confusing. 3 is number 4, so. Okay, disclosure of site visits for tonight's agendized items. Commissioner Merck?
I visited both of the sites and have not had any ex parte contacts.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so when I go to talk, the cough comes out. I'm sure everybody's had that before. It's so annoying. Yes, I had been to both sites and had no ex parte contact.
I have also visited both sites and had no ex parte contacts.
I visited both sites and no ex parte contacts.
Both sites, no ex parte?
I've visited both sites, no ex parte contact.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Now we're going to proceed to our public hearing items, and the first of which is a continuation of lot line adjustment, LLA 15-01. Question for staff, is it, on a continuation, is it important that I recite this entire paragraph, or is there an abbreviated format, or should I just grin and bear it?
Yeah, you could.
Just some continue, yeah.
You could say continue item 5, which is the hospital project at 1306 Maricopa Highway, as described in the staff report. That'll capture it.
Okay, we're going to continue item 5, which is the Ojai Valley Hospital. What was the address again? 1306. I don't see it on the public item.
Maricopa Highway.
Okay. 1306 Maricopa Highway, as described in the staff report. Is this require
I-
a motion then? Okay.
Do you want any?
I'll make that the motion.
Okay.
Second. Okay, discussion?
Was there any comment cards received on this item?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad we didn't call a special meeting for them.
Oh, that's right. Mhm. So we need a second. Oh, you did? Okay. Roll call?
Merck,
Yes.
Jagiello, Zabella.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Wojciechowski.
Okay. Item number 6 is a time extension for a director's exemption from design review DE 15-12 to change the texture and color of the exterior stucco of the Ojai Playhouse Theater located at 145 East Ojai Avenue, assessors parcel number 023-0-077-050. The general plan land use designation on the parcel is downtown commercial, that is DC, and the zoning classification on the parcel is commercial C1 district. Property owner is Khaled Alawar, applicant is Kerry Miller, and who is design builder. Staff?
So before you tonight is an extension for a director's exemption, DE 1512. I think everyone probably knows the situation with the Playhouse Theater. They're working diligently towards repairing the theater, but of course, we know there's some issues that are out of the control of the property owner. Just like to say that the one item that's of note is that we are asking for this to be extended for a whole year. The original approval was in 2015, August 2015, would have expired February 7th, 2016. We're just asking that you give a year on this. We don't know when this is going to come. I'm sure they're anxious to get back up and running, so I don't think that the extension is any way, shape, or form going to have any controlling factor in this, but we just don't feel that there's a need to come back again. It's relatively minor. Want to make sure we're giving them enough time to get through this, and so we ask for a full year or until February 7th, 2016. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's actually written
You're
as
right.
16, but it's a
17. I
typo.
stand so corrected.
I think we all caught that.
I'm not used to the 2016 yet, so yes, 2017.
Okay. Discussion, commissioners? Motion?
And I will notice that it is in the resolution. I'll just make note of this, that on attachment A, page 1 of 2, it does say 2017.
Okay, good. I'll make a motion that we adopt PC resolution approving a one-year time extension for director's exemption DE 15-12.
Second.
Oh, that's true.
I guess we could have, I didn't even think of public comment, but we can open that up for public comment if anyone would like to come forward.
You're required to take public comment on the
Speakers,
item.
applicant, would you like to speak on this? Yeah.
I can if, I'll just give a
It's
quick update.
your discretion.
I'm Kerry Miller, the contractor for the project. I'll just kind of give you a brief synopsis of where things are at. On November 13th of 2015, a complaint against Golden State Water was filed in the Ventura Superior Court. Golden State did not answer that until January 11th of 2016. And there is a court hearing that is scheduled for April 11th of 2016. And at that time, the court will determine a date for the trial. I think the hopes and probably the belief is that it'll be settled before that court date, whenever that may be. But that's about where things are at. And until there's a settlement and money starts flowing again, the owner of the building, Khaled Alawar, does not have the personal funds to be able to finance the construction on this. So.
Any questions for the applicant? Or? Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you
update.
for the extension. Appreciate it.
So there are no speaker cards before me, but this is a public hearing. Anyone from the public would like to come forward and speak on the matter, they're certainly welcome. So nobody's coming forward, so we'll officially close the public hearing portion. Further discussion, commissioners? Then I need a motion.
Should I make the motion again?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I will make the motion that we adopt PC resolution approving a one-year time extension for director's exemption DE 15-12.
Second.
Roll call. Merck,
Yes.
Jagiello,
Wait.
Yes.
Isabella,
Yes.
Oh, wait.
Nolan,
Go ahead.
Foster,
Yes?
I didn't say yes, but I'm saying yes, yeah.
Nolan, Foster,
Mm-hmm.
Lajowski.
Yes.
What is the date that 1 year from,
February 7th, 2017.
okay.
It's
Thank
your
you.
expiration date. Okay. The next is a discussion item. It's a concept review. It's CR 16-01 for the renovation of the building located at 334 East Ojai Avenue and a land swap between the city of Ojai and the property owner to relocate an existing pedestrian walkway and construct an outdoor dining area. General plan land use designation of the site is downtown commercial DC, and zoning classification of the site is commercial C1. The property owner applicant is the Shanks Investment Group. Representative is Matilaha Investment Property, Jeff Becker. Hear from staff?
So before you tonight is a concept review, and staff would just like to point out that this has already been heard once at City Council to talk about the overall general concept of whether or not the city as a property owner would be amenable to trying to negotiate a land swap with the applicant. And in their staff report, it talks about what the main points of consideration were when it went to City Council. We've actually given you the link to where you could watch that meeting on YouTube, and we also have given you, I believe in your packet is the draft City Council meetings, or no, I think they're full, they're not draft, from that meeting, so that you could get an overview of what happened during that meeting and what council, because sometimes the minutes are action minutes. They don't really provide a lot of flavor to what they wanted the planning commission to do. But, we've provided just very minimal kind of bullet points to some of the issues that staff has reviewed. But as with any concept plan, we hope that we haven't hemmed them in with too many restrictions, kind of giving you some overview of some of the issues, but we allow the applicant to come in and give a presentation. They have a PowerPoint, and hopefully we can conduct it like we do most of the others, in sort of a brainstorming, workshop-y type of atmosphere, where there's feedback given back and forth, and that's what they're looking for, is that type of feedback from you as far as design and concepts, et cetera. With that, I really would just hand it over to the applicant.
Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward and introduce yourself?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for listening to this evening. Glad to be here at 6:30, because I told everybody looking at the agenda that it was going to be 9 or 10 before I got up, so glad we're here now. We might have a problem with some of the images. I've just noticed that we're not actually intending to squash Ojai. We're working on that, so if you do have a printout of the rendering, and we're going to get another picture up later on that hopefully is fixed for everyone to see. But in a nutshell, I'd like to speak of the overall project, then look at the project existing site and the history, and then show you what we've been working on and get your comments. So as discussed, a proposed lot line adjustment that would take place like for like, no loss of land to the city, no gain for anybody either way. The alleyway is currently a decorative brick alleyway, and what we're asking to do is relocate that alleyway closer towards, and I'll use the local business names, but I don't know the numbers, but Bonnie Lou's is the adjacent building, and then that's where the alleyway would be, next to Bonnie Lou's, and then that would allow the private landowner to have his other parcel next to the parcel that was at 334 for outdoor dining. So I'll move on to the next slides and just talk you through. This is obviously the aerial from the vicinity. And we've written there the pedestrian experience ends, because one of the things that we're excited about with the project is that we know that when people are walking down the arcade, they come to a point where I feel, at least, that they kind of just seem to end, and there seems to be a struggle with businesses that open up beyond a certain point on Main Street, or behind the arcade as well. So one of the selling points, I guess, is that, as you see later on with the outdoor dining, is that hoping to entice people to explore a little bit further, to be able to walk down in that alleyway that at the moment doesn't look so enticing, and to get them to go back behind the arcade, where hopefully that will supplement those businesses' foot traffic. There are little boutiques and craft stores and clothing shops back there that probably don't get as much business as they would like, and we're hoping that this would sort of, as you're going down East Ojai Avenue, it would draw you visually towards that portion of town. So there is the view from the end of the arcade, looking at that grass area. So the grass area is the area that is privately owned, and the city owns the brick walkway that you see between the buildings. Just some more aerial shots for those unfamiliar from different directions. And here we have the 1930s. And we didn't know the name, but obviously it's a clothing store of some kind. And then the 1940s, let me just refer to my notes here. Arden's Cafe. Just catch a little of that there. There it is again. The existing street view. And then some more from the 1940s. In the 50s, the look of the building changed again. And this was the 50s, 60s was the Carousel Dairy. And then past that, it became, since the 1970s, was the thrift store. I don't know if it was always Thomas Aquinas Thrift Store. I've only been here for 12 years or so. It's always been that. As you can see from the pictures here, that the building is a little distressed. There's some very thin T111 siding over the old original siding that was underneath. It's rotten. There's some termite damage. What we're hoping to do, as well as the outdoor dining component, is to perform an exterior remodel. As part of our application getting ready for this hearing, we've looked at the inside of these buildings, and this is not just the front 334, but going back, there used to be the lady that made bags in the back 2 units, and we're hoping to remodel all the facade there. We have prepared preliminary plans just for the purposes of area calculations to show what could be going on the inside. That would be under a subsequent tenant improvement permit, but we needed to show, we do have some floor plans later on in the slideshow, to show what the areas are going to be used for, staff versus patron area, and that was to help us with our consultants calculating parking and traffic trips and so on. This is a straight shot from East Ojai Avenue back towards the rear of the arcade down the alley. And at nighttime, we had to, and we're still in the process of working on this, but I do have a slide later on of a preliminary photometric study. One of the things I really wanted to point out was that the area is actually very underlit. And there's 2 of the standard custom street lights, I think they're Steve Handelman lights, down the alley, but they really don't provide anywhere near, I did take readings, nowhere near what the Traffic Institute's recommendations are for safe lighting, lumens on the floor. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but again, we're hoping that the lighting and this area will make this a little bit more friendly. A view back to the arcade, and then down the grass area, you can see it really hasn't been utilized very, very well. The landscaping plan that we're going to get to later on actually removes the trees that are towards the end, replacing it with a green wall that would attach and grow various plants and vines to screen the building, and then additional trees and plantings in the patio area and next to the walkway. The existing siding on the side of the Bonnie Lou's restaurant. Looking back towards the sanctuary from the walkway there. And a view that we've created a rendering of from this perspective to show you the proposed development that I'll be getting to later. And again, the other view with the lighting issues. And the rear of the building. So this is a concrete masonry unit building, just with very light paint on it. Some of the detailing on the building that faces the street, that's one of historical significance. And then the facing doors of the alleyway with some of the in poor repair. There hasn't been a lot of maintenance done on this building in a long time. So that's the existing situation with private land, the city-owned property in between, 9 foot wide, and then the grass area, which again is privately owned. And the proposal is to perform that switch. There are no utilities underneath this alleyway. We've actually called out all the utility providers to mark, and apart from some abandoned laterals, there was nothing underneath at all. So this was an area calculation plan that showed some of the patio. I know it's difficult to read from here. I'm going to get some material board pictures in a minute to show sort of colors and materials that we're proposing. This, again, was just to calculate areas. One thing I was going to point out was that the landscape plan, unfortunately, the landscape architect is out of the country at the moment. I couldn't get in time to update. I'll just flick back. But you'll notice in the bottom left, there's an area carved out of that green hatching that was a recent addition, and that's for bicycle parking. So there will be a tree in the center and then two of the two-leg hoops on either side, so the ability to park 4 bicycles there. So the landscape, when we come back, the landscape plan will reflect that. So I think we're going to be getting to some of the flat-on renderings. The color board, and apologies for the size of the image here, but there will be a galvanized siding on the front unit that was, I believe, what was actually underneath the existing siding in places, but it would need to be pulled off and replaced like for like. The architectural details on the ends of the building would remain all the same, but the paint colors would be changed. So this would be tricorn black was the accent trim on the front unit. The body color of the rear 2 units over the CMU would be snowbound. It's an off-white. And I think there are color chips on the materials board.
Guy, a quick question on that one. So you're saying, did you say a galvanized steel?
Like a galvanized flat sheet.
Would be the siding of the building? Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the outdoor dining areas split into 3 with a railing. The front unit would be getting most of the area, and this front unit is envisaged that it would be a small restaurant cafe. The further 2 units going back would be wine tasting and then craft local and craft beer tasting at the back. So one of the reasons that we had to make this proposal was that the rules regarding alcohol consumption mean that we couldn't cross city property, and we have to have the patio adjacent to the building to control access and have it fenced in. This is a tree removal plan, so it just depicts where the current vegetation is on that green lot, and that was actually all going to be removed in the proposed plans. And this is the landscape and patio plan again. So you can see there was 3 major trees. Let me somebody perhaps correct my pronunciation. Cedidium Desert Museum. Close enough? Okay. And these didn't display properly. I apologize. We'll have to fix this for next time. But they're a yellowish color. So proposed bench seating, I'm going to flick forward to hopefully the materials boards. When you asked about the galvanized, it's just what you think. Galvanized flat sheet siding. Market lights, which would be high efficacy lights with a down cover. And on the side of the building, a Troy lighting, it's a custom light in several positions. And this is the photometrics out of the draft study that we were performing. One of the things I wanted to point out was that I've modeled these lights on the existing output of the lights that you have. Currently there are 2, and you saw what that looked like. If we proposed a 3rd, it would certainly help. One of the things that, because of the proximity of the adjacent building, is that we do get some light spill onto the wall. Now, there is an ordinance that says that we can't have more than 1 foot candle on any adjacent vertical surface unless we bring it to your attention and that becomes a variance in this procedure. So one of the circle closest to the light, I think it is a higher lumen, but the one that is 2 lumens is the next circle out, and it does spill just onto the base. There's no windows down that low, obviously, so we're asking just to bring that to your attention, that it would be something that we'd have to ask a variance for, but those are the actual same light output that you currently have there, and we're just proposing to add a 3rd one to lighten up the footway some more for people. From the Landscape Materials Board, planters with rusted Corten stabilized steel edging. The pavers would be matching the colors of the blue and red bricks to the side, but they would be larger with decomposed granite between. Gabion walls that would be stacked with local stone. And these are just architectural and landscape features. Shade coverings, which would have canvas, shade covering cloth between. And then there are the horizontal steel railings that would surround the perimeter of the patio with 3 entrance points, one for each of the separate areas. Benching and seating would be built-in benching with wood benching with a back to it. The green wall is shown there. It's what sort of it would go further down to the ground with a small planter in front of it. The decorative brickwork that is currently on the alleyway would be simply picked up and moved right back over and repositioned in the same place. If anything was damaged, then we'd be replacing it like for like. Selection of the plants that has been selected by the landscape architect. And finally, the proposed operations hours throughout the week. I'm just going to refer back to my notes here again. So, of course, one of the other selling points of the project is that we'd expect significant raise in tax revenue from the kind of use that we're proposing here. And again, that would be a small restaurant in the front, and then 2 different kinds of beverage. There'll be wine tasting in the middle, and also, like I said, wine appreciation and education, and then a craft beer tasting at the rear. These would not have full food service. They'd be actually too small to even fulfill the requirements for environmental health for that. So it'll be beverages and snacks only. It's also reactivate. At the moment, both these units are empty, so it would reactivate their use. And also, with the addition of bringing foot traffic back into the rear of the arcade, the parking lot behind would also benefit. Currently has 2 empty units that are for rent. One is actually right on the corner facing down the alleyway. So we're hoping that with this revitalization, that would make those rental units more appealing to somebody to open a business in. All the lights on site will be down lights. The bicycle parking, we could include some artwork built in to the design of that. And all the unfixed elements inside the patio would be taken inside of the buildings in the evenings. Everything else is the gabion walls, and the built-in benches are obviously secured. We would be willing to follow your lead if you requested any additional security, whether that be CCTV or whatever you feel is appropriate. We'd be willing to look into that. The only addition to the buildings at all would be from rooftop HVAC units that will be screened in with like-colored material. It will probably be sheet steel with a pattern to it, but it would be matching the body color of the main buildings. Trash and recycling and parking are shared with other stores in the downtown area. And the downtown shared parking plan controls the number of spaces. So unfortunately, I apologize that our renderings didn't come. That was really probably the most important part, but it looks like the software has a issue there. So when we come back, we will bring full-size plots for you to look at. I'm hoping that you've had a chance to look at the packet in front of you, and hopefully that will enable you to give me some comments and feedback on the materials and colors and design. Yeah. Thank you.
So, questions for the applicant? Yeah. Kathy?
Well, I think it's interesting. I actually, this is a personal thing. I really love what you're doing with the architecture and what have you. I have a concern that it's right next to the arcade, but at the same time, I know what the buildings look like that are existing and how compatible are they with the arcade. So as you've been presenting, I found myself kind of shifting my thoughts that potentially, if you decide to go forward or after getting all the feedback, it could almost be a link between the arcade and the rest of the buildings that go down Ojai Avenue, which are so different from the arcade. I know there are some, design guidelines, a color palette for the arcade, and I don't know, this building, with the black trim and the metal, it's a very more contemporary, modern. It's kind of a little shift and a little leap from what the arcade is. But I love the fact that you're having the outdoor dining. I think it potentially could pull people down that space, which I think is really important. And the plant palette, I kept looking for the landscape plan, but you showed it up there, and I couldn't read it, but I saw your plant palette, so I'm assuming that was reflected. It's kind of a Southwest Mediterranean hybrid, very low water use, and which is, once again, a little bit different from what's going on in the arcade. So I think, if anything, that's kind of the question. Is it compatible with the arcade, or is it okay to be a little edgy and a little different and be that link between the Spanish architecture and then everything else going down the street?
Yeah, and we discussed all this, the clients, and the feeling is that, of course, the arcade is right next door.
Right.
So, of course, the first push is going to be, well, we've got to tie this in, extend the flavor of the arcade further to this building. But we've got a building which is it's not nowhere near, and it's historical, but it doesn't have an awful lot for us to work with. It is essentially a box. Mm-hmm. And the only defining features of the building that really made it what it is were those cobble details and the gutters on the corner and the trim work. And it was certainly not compatible with what was next door at the arcade with its rough plasters and arches and the completely other style of architecture. So it was a case of, do we push it towards, or do we make it distinct? That's why we're here today. If we took the wrong path completely, we'll know about it by the end of tonight. But the thinking was that making it distinct, because looking back at the historical photos, in fact, in the past it was even more boxy. It certainly never had anything that we felt we could turn towards the Mission Revival style at all.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chester.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little opposite of Kathy in that the modern contemporary look, you're surrounded. The Chevron station went through a process, and they really went to that Spanish look there. So you're kind of caught between them and the arcade, and I've always thought that that was an extension of the arcade. So I'm with your initial thinking on that, kind of like a gaslight alley kind of thing, where I think it's a great use of that area. By the way, I think it'll create a kind of European outdoor cafe environment. I can see a lot of good activity happening in that alley. I like the width of the walkway at 7 feet, and the way you're going to plant the vines along the wall to cover that wall. That wall is not pretty either, but the vines will take care of that. you know, the contemporary railing, the contemporary look, the metal on the front, that's pretty significant change. So if I was voting on what I would prefer to see is something that felt more like the village of Ojai, instead of introducing this contemporary, and I'm all for contemporary architecture in the right location. I'm just not sure this is the right location for that look myself. Now, forget about what was there before, because you're going to redo the building. What's there now, yeah, we all could agree that it's really doesn't adhere to anything. It's pretty ugly, actually. So, but if you're going to go through the process of remodeling the building and doing this project, I would prefer to see it more leaning toward the existing architecture that's there.
Okay.
So that's my input.
So just one more point was that I don't have any photos, unfortunately, but when you pull back the T111 that's falling apart on the base, we found that's why the client pushed in that direction, was that the galvanized siding was underneath, and we think it was just that when that was distressed years ago, that they just put the plywood over the top of that. We might be, whatever comments we get today and whatever direction we get today, we might have some constraints from the historical nature of the building. I think the colors are obviously going to be, we've got more room to maneuver, but in terms of styling itself, I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to change any of the lines of the building at all. So just, I was going to suggest that we keep those thoughts in mind, that we might have our hands tied a little.
Well, some historical items are not worth keeping.
I agree.
That's,
Just because it's old doesn't mean it's historical.
Yeah. That's my opinion.
Rosalie?
Okay, I got some questions. The green wall up against the opposite building. I mean, those trees right now are hiding a myriad of sins.
Yes, sir.
And I'm concerned that, something that's creeping up slowly, when you rip those trees out, it's not going to be pretty. And in fact, that building dips down, and the side of Bonnie Lou's is, where their kitchen is scary, and you can see all kind of junk up on there on top. So that's a big concern. When that all gets ripped out, it's not going to be nice. So is there a way to think about something that's going to camouflage more immediately?
Yeah, I'll be honest, that gap between the two buildings.
Pardon?
The gap between the two buildings, I didn't really even notice it when I first was walking around looking at the site. It is well screened, and it is pretty distressed. We'd certainly want the vines to go as high as the roof that dips down in the middle to make it one wall that it covers it. If we need to go higher in that section to conceal the gaps between, then I will ask the landscape architect to pick something. It might constrain the footway. I'm hoping to try and keep 7 foot clear. If I can get something planted in there that's going to be self-supporting, a tall tree, I don't know what our options are. I'll speak and come back.
I got several things. Okay.
What is the height, I'm sorry, what is the height of Bonnie Lou's wall there?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Well,
It really dips down significantly in the middle. I'm guessing probably only 12 feet or
maybe,
so. Yeah.
maybe 10, 12 feet. And you can
Because
see.
your building's like 14 feet, and it seems as, I think it's taller than the building that we're discussing here. So,
Well,
considerably taller than 12 feet.
Well, either way, it goes down like this, and
Yeah,
then
and
it's got all
two
kind, and you can.
slopes that join down
Yeah,
to the
and this
roof.
is all corrugated.
It doesn't match
metal,
the siding. It's not
and-
plastered.
Right, and then there's stuff that you can see actually above. You can see above, and there's junk on the roof.
Okay.
That's really unsightly.
Okay.
So that would be, that wouldn't be, a good thing for the patrons to be looking at,
Right.
right? So, okay, so that's one big area of concern for me. So is the plan, so you would put in that walkway
Yes.
And you guys are you guys, I don't know if this was discussed at city council, I didn't check this, but the merchants right now pay tax on the maintenance of that current walkway. I mean, have you guys, has that all been clarified, how that all gets maintained and who's maintaining it?
That-
Just a note.
That discussion didn't take place. At the moment, the arrangement, that we thought we were proceeding into was that since we are just doing the like for like and moving the alleyway, that we do all the work to replace it just as it was in the same condition. It's still city property, and that the existing situation will continue as it is.
Because the merchants are very proud of that, that upgrade.
Yeah.
They, at least the old timers say that, that they really, cost a lot of money to put that in back there, and
Yes.
so, just want to make that note. Okay, your hours of operation, so you're proposing that building, nothing's happening there until 7 o'clock at night and only till 10 o'clock?
7 in the morning.
Oh, 7 in the morning?
Yes.
Got it. I was like, oh, wow, that's going to be tough to do business that way. Okay, so then, I think that the most glaring concern for me is definitely the compatibility with the arcade, but much more so the compatibility with the Board of Realtors building that it's attached to. I think it's just a complete disconnect with that building, and I don't think we can just, it's so jarring to think of those two things next to each other. I just sat and I looked at it today for quite some time, and I don't think that we can pretend that that's not there. And I'd really like to see a streetscape that incorporates the shapes of that building, because, even though there's actually space between them, the facade they're connected.
Yes.
And, for what it's worth, there's certainly a possibility to discuss doing something jointly with the Board of Realtors. That's something that could be brought before in a director's meeting. But I think that we need to look at those two buildings together. And in that sense, I think that the uber contemporary thing just doesn't make sense there. And we got to find some way to make those two things come together.
Do you think that's something that we could accomplish with color choices, or are we looking at the shapes again?
I think, I hear what you're saying, that trying to change a shape is going to probably just lead to all kinds of grief. So I think maybe color and materials. I'm not sure that metal makes sense.
Okay.
It'd be nice, of course, to reuse it, and somewhere else it'd be super cool. But I just think, maybe something warmer, lighter, some wood, some. The Board of Realtors building has kind of a faux tile thing right there. If you look at the other buildings, if you're not going to change that line, I think maybe the addition of some wood, something warmer rather than black colors, black and steel.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
I wanted to just talk about one thing as far as who owns the building, where the new walkway is going to be. Do we know that? Is that Bonnie Lou's? That is Bonnie Lou's. That whole, yeah. It would be nice to see that wall be upgraded. I know it'd be at the expense of someone else, but it also might be to the advantage of this new developer to offer, because stucco isn't that expensive, really, in the big scheme of things. And I'm just wondering if you consider upgrading that wall as part of your development project. And of course, you'd have to contact the owners and see if they'd be interested in it. But it would certainly, what's going to happen there is that alleyway is going to become all yours. It's, even though the city's going to own what? Well, it's going to be the cities, but it's going to be it's going to feel like the business is there. So you're going to be sitting in that restaurant, you're going to be sitting at the tables. That's a room. You're creating a room there, that outdoor room. So that wall, even though it's owned by someone else, it's in your room. So that's something I would think that you'd want to explore. And in that light, I would also contact the Board of Realtors too, to see if there's an option to work something with that whole frontage there and kind of solve that issue once and for all here. And then that whole facade is then taken care of. Those two ugly spots, you're already taking care of the, the side where all your shops are. So we're talking about the front elevation. So I would suggest that, you possibly consider as part of your plan. I know it's more money, but I think it would certainly make you look a whole lot better there if you had, that whole alley looking upgraded to the level that you want.
So obviously, while I'm taking all these comments in and I have to take them back to the client, one thing that I'm guessing they're going to tell me is that the idea of the green wall was to conceal what we now know is a pretty ugly siding issue. Integrating the colors on the front seems very reasonable and a much easier thing to do. There are some technical problems with us taking that sidewall that doesn't belong to us and even if we receive the owner's permission.
Right.
It's a lot of
I know
work.
it would take cooperation for sure.
Yeah, there's
I
a
know
lot of
that you can't just go in
issues, and the openings are direct on the property line, which, as I'm sure you understand, actually creates.
So what happens if you plant something there, and then
we're
the
gonna
owner
trim
wants
the green wall?
Yeah,
back
then the
away from
owners
window
of those
faces.
buildings own those plants. So I think there's some cooperation that might be make sense.
Okay.
To at least have the discussion.
Okay.
Because once you plant something, first of all those podocarpus that are planted there, they're pretty significant. You're going to then turn to a vine, which is going to take a lot longer to really take form. And then what happens if those owners decide, well, we have a leak, we have a maintenance issue, the vines are growing into the old wood siding, which happens.
I think it stands. I think the green wall is a.
Yeah, I was going to say, you needed to describe that a little bit better. Basically, it's a green wall. It's an actual material that you buy. It's metal, and it's
Outside.
it's
not
not
off the
right
wall.
up against the wall. And a lot of them you can actually hinge. So if you do need to go in and access the wall for repairs or painting, you can actually rotate the walls out. So, and you can keep them trimmed. Once again, we didn't have the planting plan, so I couldn't see what they recommended for the vine, but a lot of them are, you get something sizable and you can, they grow pretty quick.
And, the other thing is, I'm not suggesting that you pay for all that either. I think I would make a proposal to the Board of Realtors. That's a reasonable request, and also talk to Bonnie Lou's about upgrading the wall, because it may be in their best interest as well. So that's what I'd like to see that. I'd like to see it as a whole, because I really see that whole alley as a room in itself. But I know it's not your obligation, but there is an overlap. You can't argue that. You're planting right up against that wall. The sidewalk's going there. We are going to then have a limitation of what we can plant there. We're not going to be able to put photocarpus there anymore, or anything significant.
What I'd like to do then is, open those dialogues for both sides, and perhaps just come back for a sort of another, just a brief informal, maybe even off agenda, just to keep you informed. I don't want to go and prepare a whole batch of plans and find out I took the wrong path. So if that's okay with you, we'll have the conversations and report back and see where we are then.
We can certainly continue the.
If I could jump in one moment here, I would recommend that we schedule that as just put that on the agenda as opposed to something not on the agenda.
Okay.
Because it would be consideration of a specific project. But certainly it could be brought back at will. But off-agenda items should be non-existent.
I'd like to offer, if for some reason Bonnie Lou's was not willing to cooperate in any way, I'd like to come back with, a plant or a tree, something that would really fill that space in for you, and see what your reaction is at that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I just want you to have the conversation. I think it's worth having that conversation with both of the, both the Board of Realtors and Bonnie Lou's.
Sure.
I
Okay.
think Kathy has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. So I'm looking at Chester. Initially when I looked at it and when I first started speaking, I was thinking more leaning towards the Spanish, complementing the arcade. And I still, to a degree, I am, although I do love what you're doing here, and I agree with Chester and that it's really different from the arcade. So I think I would prefer really good architecture and really good design over a pseudo something which I know we have some in town. But at the same time, I really acknowledge that the arcade is there and the historical factor, and once again, the materials and color palette. So, I think your challenge is pretty much what we just described. I mean, I could easily go a little more modern there, but I think it's really a delicate location, because you really are at that place where the arcade ends. So I just wanted to throw it out there, and then I also wanted to make a possible suggestion, and I'm not even sure if it would work, and this gets back to the 7-foot walkway and the narrow 2-foot planter. Maybe if the vine option doesn't work and you wanted to explore something, you might be able to do some sort of a cutout every so many feet. So you're still keeping the walk as wide as you can, but if you had to plant something in there, you could, because 2 feet is pretty narrow. But anyway, just my thoughts.
Okay, so just a few comments. Yeah, I just don't think this works as it is, just with the galvanized and the black. And also, I just want to talk a little bit about the patio covering out there. I think that I think we reached a decent compromise with the High Hoburger folks almost across the street there. I think that might be a compromise that could work, if I'm just kind of looking at examples. Something similar to that. I think you need more wood in the patio, possibly a more permanent cover, or maybe a more trellis-like cover, I think would work better than this kind of what you have now. And also, I hope that the bench remains. I do see it, I guess, on this rendering, that the bench, I don't know if it's officially a trolley stop bench or not, but
that's a big point for us too. That's good, because it brings, it's a community center.
Yeah,
and
it's definitely something I think needs to stay. I mean, it's just like somebody's always, and I'm not just, all different people are always using that bench at all different times of day. So I think that's an important attribute. And then finally, those, the market lights. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other over them, but I think you should be aware. I do believe that they're, Tivoli lights, which could be maybe construed similarly, have been a hot topic item at other projects. So you might consider maybe a different alternative.
So if we're, and just to recap a few of your other comments here, that, it seems like warmer, a little bit more integrated. I think that the market lights would suited the steel trellis structures type of construction better, where they could hang free. If we're going to something which sounds like a little bit more permanent, going to be some wood posts and a trellis over the top with vines, or however it ends up, it's going to give us some more options for mounting, where we could get away from the market lights completely. That would be fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, I guess it's my turn. I really like the concept of the use of this space. It makes total sense to extend the public area in terms of coming off the face of your building, and incorporate that for use for whatever those uses may be. What kind of uses do you see? I'm looking at that front building. Is there any talk of restaurants or anything like that being discussed?
Restaurant cafe. It's difficult to call it a full restaurant, but it would. It's the only unit that would be big enough to have the required dry storage and the big sinks and everything else for us to use that use. So that would be the only unit out of the 3 that would be serving a full menu.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's pretty ideally situated for that type of use. One thing I noticed in your rendering is you have an exhaust coming off on the street elevation, Ojai Avenue elevation. There's a large exhaust there. That's something that would have to be screened in. And with today's ordinance. And that kind of leads me down the path of trying to reconcile the use of the materials you're showing here. I appreciate what you're doing. I love gabions and the contemporary railings and everything you're doing here. But I'm looking at the context between Montgomery Street, where you have the Chevron gas station, between there and the arcade, and I sense a bit of a disconnect. And use-wise, I'm perfectly fine with what you're proposing and how that goes. But I think the architecture, which I really appreciate, may be in the wrong location. And looking at, especially from Ojai Avenue, or starting at Ojai Avenue, I can see actually some the need to respect the adjacent building to some degree. Possibly consider a parapet going up a little higher that would help you screen that exhaust that's going in the coming up through the roof there, and that may lend you the ability to tie the architecture together a little more. I'm a little apprehensive about the galvanized steel. Maybe it could be done. It's a very strong statement. It's a very strong statement, and it reflects, there's a historical context to that, I understand. I'm not sure if that could be mitigated somewhat, still use the material somehow as a wainscot or something, but it's in and of itself, the galvanized material with the dark slated gray parapet and the contemporary patio coverings. I guess that's canvas that you have strung between galvanized tubular steel, that sort of thing. And that type of thing, I think, needs to be softened a little bit, and whether that's wood or how you would do that, I'm not sure. I like gabions. We use them all the time. It's an interesting use that you're proposing here. It looks like you're using it as pilasters to divide the railings.
Divide railings form M caps for some of the benches, and actually just as well, I think one of them was just a visual element, just some natural material in there.
Mm-hmm. Where you use the local rock and that sort of thing. So that might be an interesting way to incorporate some of that more contemporary ideas that you're having into a more traditional setting,
Okay.
you see. So I'm leaning, I like the idea of tying that whole paseo together, because I think if we don't touch the Bonnie Lou wall, there's going to be an undesirable effect in contrast, and that whole alleyway needs to be cleaned up if you're going to do it. And whatever that takes, that's, I think, Chester used the word cooperation, goes a long way in meeting and compromising, that sort of thing. The alleyway, the walkway itself, did I hear 7 foot? I see 9 foot drawn, and the planner is 3 feet, 2 feet?
2 feet, so that's what we get, 7.
And the walkway is 7 feet, so that should be adequate for passage, I would think. I think those are my general comments on it. Hopefully that helps you.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
If it's possible, it sure would be nice to see more of a photoshopped rendering, when you come back with the image, at least the facade, a photoshopped rendering rather than the drawings. I think that really, helps visualize better. And if you could do a streetscape with the Board of Realtors building that you're attached to, that would also be super helpful.
Okay.
Further comments, commissioners? John?
I'd just like to say, the staff report addresses traffic and parking, but I think that might become an issue when you come back with this as the actual plan. So
we had a traffic study
yeah,
and a
I'd just
parking
say
study accomplished.
be prepared to
Yeah, so
address that, 'cause
the table 3.6 of the municipal code We're inside the boundary of the downtown area of the shared parking agreements. So the analysis actually showed from the tables that there is no increase in parking or trips over the existing use. Now, I stand before planning commissioners a lot and try to argue where the matrix has told me I have, this was just 2 months ago, 200 spaces were shown on the matrix, and the client actually really only had 20 employees. So there was a disconnect there against us. And this time round, I see it the other way around. The ordinances say a number and a use and an impact, which is probably very different from what the standard matrix would allow outside of this area. But that's what it's been analyzed to. So ATE did the report. That's what I'll be bringing along.
I got a question for Kathleen about the traffic report or the traffic.
Yes, sir.
How do you determine, I mean, it's a retail area, right? And it's already an existing area. And so is it based on usage? Is each one of those buildings downtown Ojai declare a usage, and does that affect the traffic report in any way?
So there's two issues you have to do with traffic. One is the CIRCA, and the other one is the general plan and the traffic issues that the city has. The baseline for the traffic for the city's general plan is 1989, is that correct? And so they look at whatever use was there at the time, and then they compare that baseline to what the increase in use is. So, you know, they're adding square footage for outdoor dining that allows more people to be served. So of course there would be an increase. It generally speaks to, you know, peak trips in the general plan. As far as CIRCA is concerned, the baseline is whatever is there at the time they come in. Since there's nothing there, then you can add, correct? Isn't that what we determined with the the baseline for traffic? So, you know, have you turned in your traffic report already?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Was it just recently?
No, it was a few weeks ago, but not the parking study. That
Not the
hasn't
parking
come.
study, okay. So I know we're moving this ahead because we knew they had to do, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse in this particular application because we knew that there was going to be some issues in how we actually work with the city attorney to do this land swap. You know, it's an unusual situation. So we wanted to come before you specifically to talk about the width of because, you know, it is not necessarily a one-for-one swap because, you know, obviously we're in the middle now, we're going over to the side, we're going to, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to flush those things out first. So I haven't seen the traffic, but as we do with everything, if we can't demonstrate, if there's some assumptions made that aren't defensible, we will have it, you know, peer-reviewed like we do anything else. So clearly, it's going to look at peak hour, and they're opening at 7, so they'll be commute early and commute late, but they'll hit both of them, so we'll just have to look at it. But that's what you look at. And so there are two factors with traffic, and so I don't know what other else to say to you because this is all kind of folding. They're not even a complete application now, so we haven't seen a lot of those issues. We did meet with one of the, I guess, the representatives. I think it was like, what, a week or two ago, Matt?
It was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and we talked about the shared parking, but, you know, in order for them to do the shared parking, you know, they're going to have to analyze everyone who uses the shared parking. Shared parking is based on off-peak hours, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it's a rather involved study. So, you know, they want to use that. And then, of course, we'd have to do some analysis on how that parking got to be there because the parking isn't really, that I know of, that I wasn't able to find, nor can staff provide me with, that it's actually tied to those businesses. It's actually a city lot. So we don't know how it was created. I mean, obviously those businesses were there before there ever was a city lot. So, you know, there's a lot of analysis and review that has to be done on that particular subject of it. Because we do know that by adding more seats, you add more demand. So it's just a matter of, you know, getting all that information together. It is, I mean, we all know, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm kind of away from the mic, but we all know that these issues have been identified for, you know, decades in the city of Ojai. This isn't a new issue of traffic and parking, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I always wonder, like, you have a group of people using downtown Ojai. It's the same group of people, and those groups of people are going to go to different places depending on what's open or what's available. So let's say there's 1,000 tourists in a day that come to Ojai, whatever, and those 1,000 tourists now move from Monte Grappas to this new place, and they divide. Now, does that actually, just because there's a new restaurant, does that increase the tourism automatically, or is it just the same 1,000 people moving around to different locations?
Well, I guess that depends on whether you're a neighboring community outside of Ojai and you think we're putting more traffic through you or not. I would imagine if you ask them, they're going to say there's more people. If you're a city of Ojai, you're probably going to have the viewpoint that it's the same person eating at 3 different restaurants. I don't know how to answer that, but
Yeah, well, I was just wondering how the traffic study worked, and, is it just because the shop is already there, there's a store already there, but it has a use. So obviously, the use is a big thing. A restaurant versus a retail store.
I think it's the addition of outdoor, increasing the demand. You're fully utilizing the parcels now. That's the whole reason for having the outdoor space, is to be able to seat more people as you then develop the inside of the building. So I think it's really a push between what part of the existing retail space is now being utilized. What's it being utilized for? Is it kitchen space? Is it storage space? And where's the swap, because, obviously there's always a mathematical calculation done for the maximum number of people you can have depending on the use, right? In the building code, we all know that, right? So I don't know. I mean, but that's an analysis that his traffic guy would have to do. Often we get these traffic reports and they just make a blanket statement that says, well, these people aren't coming in at peak hours. I mean, at some point, we're going to get challenged on that because we're going to have more and more traffic coming in all the time, as we heard through the neighborhood planning. That was one of the big complaints we heard when we were there. So all I can tell you is that you get a traffic report, we get the parking report, we'll analyze it, possibly have it peer reviewed, and then bring it back before you.
Can I add just one thing from the traffic side of things? While I don't want to paint a target on one of my own projects, just for the sake of I'm here for information and I want you to be informed, is that Table 3.6 that covers the whole of the shared parking arrangement in downtown, the retail commercial that was there before is 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Restaurants of any size, including restaurant, deli, coffee house, juice bar, under 1,000 square feet of usable area per unit is 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet, exactly the same calculation. The other point to bring up is outdoor dining. This is in the table number 3. Outdoor dining areas associated with a restaurant, it doesn't have any requirement for parking.
That's kind of my point.
Okay, so I want to make this very clear. That shared parking is based on an analysis that says use is closed and use is open. It's not a given. This isn't like you have to demonstrate. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to be argumentative, but you clearly need to read. Right. So I'm just trying to explain that. I don't know. Again, a shared parking analysis is a unique analysis that takes all the businesses that are using the shared parking and says one person parks and goes to all these different businesses, but that the sum total of number of parking spaces that are there that are much lower than if we took the aggregate of all those and added them together is based on, if you go to a mall, there's a theater, well, there's a bank, well, the bank closes at 5 and the theater opens at 6. And you have to do that whole analysis. There's no given to it. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that it might very well work out that that's how it is.
Got it. But the solution then is to add, if you did increase a big demand, if you had a big demand in parking, what would the city do? What's the next step? How do we stop a business from coming in, or do we increase parking somehow?
No,
how
so
do we go about?
The city has an in lieu fee.
Right.
And that fee funds parking lots. That's what that in lieu fee is for. And anybody in the city of Ojai can use that in lieu fee to offset parking that they can't provide on site. Obviously, they can't provide parking on site. They'd pay an in lieu fee, and then the burden is on the city to aggregate those funds together.
Okay.
So we've had a meeting with the applicant's representative, and when we had the meeting with him, we discussed all the different options that were available to him. And we said, if you're going to use the shared parking, then this is how you would have to demonstrate that you're in that shared parking, and that parking that was in the back was actually somehow allocated to this. So what we don't want to have happen is people using the same city building, parking lot over and over again without funding, you know what I mean? So we have this issue where, we actually have an in lieu fee, and that in lieu fee is to help the city fund the parking lots that then we're going to provide, So it's just an analysis that hasn't been done yet. But obviously, as you did with the Topa Topa Winery, there are applicants that choose to self-mitigate and not put traffic on the peak hours, as far as traffic is concerned, And we also know that we've had a couple people before us recently that talked about the parking situation and were interested in, the city looking at the trolley, the bicycle parking, and that's probably why you added the bicycle parkings. We spoke to the applicant about that. And taking those ideas of getting people out of the car, not being car-centric too. So that we've explained this all to them, but we just haven't analyzed at this point. So they're very much aware that the city's, willing to look at the trolley or bicycle parking or pedestrian, the in lieu fee or the shared parking, whatever works the best for him.
Is there a current in lieu fee fund somewhere in the city?
Yes.
Yeah, and do we know what's in it and what it's allocated for? And I'm bringing this up because this parking thing comes up over and over again, and I really wanted to get more educated on it as well. So I'm not trying to. I'm not. This is for my benefit.
With a brief comment to answer the question, although perhaps we should schedule a full discussion of this item at a future date.
Yes.
When it's on the agenda. The brief answer is there is an in lieu fee. I do not know the amounts. The finance director will be able to provide you the amounts. And any in lieu fee is dedicated by law to use for whatever it was collected for. That's why there's different funds within that fund. The parking in lieu fee may only be used to pay for parking mitigation. The amount is, again, I don't have the
Well,
amount.
I'm not concerned, but I'm more interested in knowing what the solutions are that the in lieu fee is designed to, like, for instance, what is the alternative parking that the in lieu fee would then pay for?
That item, I
Those
think
kinds
is-
of plans, are there any plans like that in the city that are just floating out there that we're not aware of? So we needed to expand parking, where would that be? That's where I'm going with it.
And that's an item for another discussion.
Okay.
As that would be beyond the agenda item we're on right now. But I'm certainly work with staff to bring that item up.
One quick question. Because of the proximity of this building to the historic arcade, does that trigger any review process from, like, say, historic preservation?
So as you know, the arcade is landmarked, and it would be staff's recommendation. The building, this building in particular is past, or it's older than 50 years, as he indicated in his PowerPoint. So we would ask that they have a historic report done to evaluate its potential for being landmarked. Is it significant, et cetera, et cetera. A number of people looked at this building before this gentleman bought it. That was expressed to everybody, and the HPC did reach out to us and, said, well, we want it evaluated for its potential to be landmarked. So with that said, I think that it's not landmarked currently. It is adjacent. There's nothing in the rules and regulations that require it to go to HPC, but I'm sure that the board would reach out to you and request that you either get a historian to say that the architecture as presented to you is compatible and not a detriment to the arcade, or that you send it to them for feedback. Obviously, they wouldn't be an approving board. They would just be giving you feedback as they did with anything else. You'd reach out to them. So I think it's just one of those things. If it were as you've directed them to look at it, I think you've done the appropriate suggestion to them that they look at how it's going to look like with the arcade. So.
Well, so is it necessary that we recommend it to the HPC, or how?
No, it's not required. I think it's just a matter of it's at your discretion. They often feel, and they are pretty vocal about this, that they think anything that's within the general standard is, if you're standing on the public right-of-way, which would be the sidewalk or the street, and you're looking at the arcade, if you can see this building, that is what the Department of Interior wants someone to look at. It's if, not from any vantage point, as the HPC, this is a point of we don't always agree on, but the standards do say that if you're standing in the public right-of-way and it's what the person drives by and they see it within their viewpoint, their view shed, then it's something that really should be compatible with the landmark. Shouldn't detract from it. Doesn't mean it has to look exactly like it. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying. And so my recommendation is that's their area of expertise. You should consider making use of that area of expertise and have them weigh in on it. But it's totally at your discretion.
I would personally not recommend that the HPC needs to review this.
If I could add one point to note, that there's two separate historical reviews at issue here. One is under CIRCA. CIRCA require, and this project is sufficiently large that it's not exempt from CIRCA because it requires a DRP along with approval of a parcel merger and the city's giving up its land. All three are independent triggers for CIRCA review. They're exchanging its land. Under CIRCA, we have to have a historical resource report analyzed for potential significant impacts to historical resources for any building over 50 years old. Independent, and you would be the initial reviewing body, and in the end, it would be the council that would have to find, among other things, that whatever CIRCA document comes out of this process has adequately analyzed the potential impacts to this potentially historic resource because it's over 50 years old. Council will be the final decision-making body because it requires a land swap. In addition, independent of that CEQA process, there is our existing historical preservation code, which allows but does not require the Historic Preservation Commission to review this project because it's next to the arcade, and that is entirely at the Planning Commission and the City Council's discretion whether to refer the project to the Historic Preservation Commission for consideration of the adjacency and the impacts on the arcade. That's within, again, your discretion or the council's discretion.
Thank you.
So just one quick comment regarding that. So it sounds as though the applicant's going to come back with another concept review, taking it to whatever level you're going to do it. And at that point, we'll have more information, and depending if we thought it was a good move, a smart move, we could at that point then make the recommendation that HBC review it when they came back. Okay.
Oh, yes, I wasn't, when I was talking about that, we were looking, I think that you're doing appropriate job in how you're directing him as far as architecture. I don't think they need to weigh in at this concept level. Thank you for the clarification. We were talking about more once they get to the point that it's a firmed up, design.
I don't want to go off on another tangent, but I won't. I'll save it for another discussion item. Sorry.
Very well. So, yeah, you got us going now, Mac. So I think the protocol here is going to be a continuation, and when the applicant is ready, he can contact staff, and then we can set up the next continuing
It's not a
date.
continuation, it's a whole new concept review, right? You don't
Oh, you
continue
can't continue the
continue
concept review?
concepts.
Well, we didn't, it's fine. Let me just explain that. Normally, this was a very basic concept review because, as we pointed out, it's a little different because we are actually a landholder and there's a land swap going on. So,
Right.
So we didn't notice this to the area, to the people around the area because this was just so basic. So the next concept review, we will probably notice for the surrounding business owners because you're obviously talking about
So
lose. So we would want to do that. But
we'll think of this as a preliminary
yes, that's
discussion, and
yes.
so it's not an official new concept review for you guys. So when you're ready with that, you can go back to staff, and we'll go ahead and schedule that. Okay. If that's it, then I think we're done with your item. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. That leads us to item number 8, which is our Planning Commission's subcommittees. Do we have anything, going on with this? See, we're in our second meeting, so I didn't know.
Yeah, with Complete Streets, I won't have a report till the beginning of February.
Mhm.
And then Kathleen, I'm not sure if, I want to make sure that, or Matt, maybe you can advise me. I was the chair of the model efficient landscape, or I think I said that backward. It's MOELO is the acronym. And I know we got to a certain point, and then when Joe Fletcher was here, I believe, I don't know if he said we tabled it and then we kind of resurrected the committee. I just want to make sure that I'm not stepping out of my bounds by reporting that you and I are working on the checklists, the guideline checklists for the landscape ordinance.
I don't, you mean as far as the planning commission needing to appoint another ad hoc group?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need to, but I'm just saying that I was the chair of that committee. We took it to a certain point, then there was a lapse in time, and I just wanted to, I'm
Okay,
not sure if
so-
I'm
so-
reporting as just as a planning commissioner or that I'm still chair of that committee, and
I don't think the committee still exists. That was my impression, that when Joe Fletcher took the ordinance through to city council, he did so, that committee, I believe, was disbanded. I don't really know. It was very awkward. I agree, it was very awkward how it was handled.
so, yeah, I wasn't sure if I should
But
report.
what we're doing now, let me just back up for a minute. This discussion item was put on the item number 8, was not to report on current. This was an item, I think, that Commissioner Lajowski asked to be put on, if I can remember right, to be put on, so we could discuss the subcommittees and particularly your sustainable subcommittee. I believe that this is the way I understood. That's the reason it's really general on here, was to agendize something, current goals and objectives of the subcommittees, because I believe am I wrong on this? Because that's what I understood, was somebody wanted to form a subcommittee and they asked me to place it on the agenda.
Yeah, but I think I thought only council could direct the creation of an ad hoc.
I think that's true, but I think what we were trying to do was to get consensus from the planning commission that you wanted something to be sent up to city council to request a subcommittee be formed to specifically deal with sustainable issues. So so it's not coming from one particular planning commission, but the commission as a whole. They see that as a goal. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I was asked to agendize this so that we could have, I believe you were told that we can't talk about it unless it's agendized. And so I put it on here so that you could discuss in a very broad way, and Matt and
Yes.
I believe we talked about this, correct? And so that it was, so that because I wasn't really sure exactly what you wanted to do with this. Is a little bit different than reporting on existing subcommittees.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, wow. I wasn't fully prepared for this, but I have been adamantly pursuing city council since September or earlier, so I am familiar. So basically, as you know, I mean, the objective of the ad hoc committee was to just review existing, codes, ordinances, such as the parking situation, how these things are either impediment or how they are impediments to sustainable building. For example, composting toilets, the small houses, things of that nature. So the goal of the subcommittee was just to review, take input, hold some open meetings, and see how we could suggest some improvements or additions to the existing code and to ordinances. I don't really know. I keeping it as broad as possible to make recommendations to council how to encourage more sustainable or green growth in Ojai. Because as I'm sure you all know, and many folks are aware, oftentimes the developments in green building and sustainable design far outpace law, municipal law. You couldn't even build a living building in Ojai at this time, code-wise.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the outline.
So, Mac, we're talking a subcommittee, but there's also another instrument, and that's the ad hoc committee, which is less formal and doesn't require as much oversight, and it's less informal. I'm wondering if that may be a starting point for you.
And I think that's what I was aiming towards, was the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
Because, yes, and it wouldn't necessarily, you know, well,
It's a little looser, we can,
I want to have as few parameters as possible in the exploratory phases. With Chesterfield.
Well, yeah, I just want to ask Matt, and the difference between an ad hoc committee and a subcommittee, and their powers, you might say.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Subcommittee is formally created by action. That has to be on the agenda, and it has like ongoing mission and an ongoing existence. Once that's created, no matter how many members are on that subcommittee, it becomes a Brown Act body. If it is created by and subsidiary of a Brown Act body, which means the Brown Act then applies to it. So a subcommittee requires formal meetings with the notice and agenda and the whole 9 yards. An ad hoc committee, if created with less than a quorum, solely of members of a legislative body, which means you can't mix bodies, and is always less than quorum, is not required to be noticed and otherwise agendized and subject to the whole 9 yards on the Brown Act. That only works if the ad hoc committee has a specific goal, and that goal can be accomplished in a reasonably short time frame. So you can't have an ad hoc committee that exists for years, but you could have one that exists for X months to accomplish this kind of a project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was a 12-month layout. So, yeah.
Well, then, with that said, I think you've gotten support from the city council on this,
Yes.
and support from all of us as well. And I'm excited to see this move forward. And I want to make sure, that if it does move forward, I have a feeling that this is necessary, so necessary. I mean, I believe Kathy sent me an interesting document from the city of Goleta.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah,
Have you
she
read
sent
that?
it to me, too.
Yeah, yeah, and that was very interesting, and I believe it was an ordinance
Yes.
that they allowed for a certain amount of green technology, sustainable technology to be, researched, considered, and even implemented on a test basis. That's almost like a perfect document for us, because I do think we're making a lot of decisions, as we go, and really a lot of what that committee can do is help us make those decisions now. And I have a feeling that should be more of a consistent thing until a transition is made, where we have our ordinances up to date with those types of sustainable guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So just having an ad hoc committee is great for conversation, but I was thinking that to take it a step further, having a subcommittee may be have a little bit more.
My thought on the subcommittee versus the ad hoc committee, I didn't want to create more. I thought it would create less work for staff. I mean, and it would allow us more flexibility. As Matt's saying, like, okay, so we have 6 items on the agenda, and we can't talk about 8 items. You know what I mean? If we're on a formalized, agendized Brown Act committee, which I felt was just my thinking. I'm not, completely attached one way or the other, although I do lean a lot more towards the ad hoc structure in this format. And maybe the ad hoc, one of the recommendations of the ad hoc committee will be to formalize the subcommittee.
Right.
So.
At the appropriate time, yeah. Now, Claire.
So do we actually have an ad hoc committee set up?
No, we would be forming an ad hoc committee. Now, did I hear you say, Matthew, that the membership of the ad hoc committee is comprised of one board? It would have to be just amongst us here?
Yeah.
We can't bring out people from the public, or?
An ad hoc committee can have a consultant attend a meeting,
Mhm.
and that consultant could be a member of the public. But the formal membership of an ad hoc committee has to be
Within
the membership, subset of the membership less than a quorum of the body that created it.
Okay.
The city can bring in its people, of course. The city can hire consultants who can act as staff. I can come to meetings, et cetera. Staff can attend meetings, but that's the limit
Can
there.
it also include, I mean, like, for example, the Tribal Resources Ad Hoc Committee?
They're brought on as subject matter experts under both the city's general plan and the requirements in CEQA that we accede or bring in the tribe and bring their knowledge to the table.
For example, the way I laid it out in that document I shared to the committee, we would invite some builders, some people, who specific, maybe like a local environmental science teacher, just keep it open. That was the formulation that I was thinking of. And then I was thinking 2 to 3 members of the planning commission. I also at one point was thinking about asking a member possibly from the building appeals board, but if that's not
that would be fine to include. However, that would then make it have to be open to the public.
Okay, so then.
Although if formal subcommittee.
Becomes a formal subcommittee, correct?
Yeah, because you've got
yes, we want to stay away
board.
From, yeah.
And depending on how broad that public membership goes, and if they're invited to attend one meeting versus attending all the meetings, it may well become public open to the public, but not a Brown Act body, half open, half out. It gets, the further away you get from a meeting of just 3 members of the Planning Commission, the harder it is to maintain the ad hoc committee definition under the Brown Act. We can think about the edges, but in general, the further away you get from that, and that's fine to do. It's just a matter of it elevates the status of this subgroup, and it creates some open and public requirements that apply.
I mean, my thinking was to keep, I would like to have, and this is just me, I'm hoping we can talk more about it. I was thinking of having this ad hoc committee, there would be a steering group of, 6 to 7 people, 2 to 3 of which would be planning commission members. The other 3 would be experts from the community. So I don't know what that would make it.
I think if those experts were formal members of the group, I would recommend that we treat it as a Brown Act body. I realize that creates more work, but this is a matter of the Brown Act favors openness and not closedness.
I just want to also remind everybody that my understanding of this sustainable issue you were doing was you were looking at, the zoning ordinance and how you could weave it into requirements. If you're talking about the building requirements, that is not what you're tasked with. That's the Building Appeals Board. So well, that's true. That's true. Council can do whatever they want to do, but I think you need to understand that when we were talking to the city council, it's my understanding that you were talking about giving green building incentives, like to say things like, when we see somebody that has, like let's just take what we did tonight, parking, and you're downtown and you provide you're right in front of a trolley stop and you have bicycle parking. Let's have something in there that says if you're within within the walking blah blah blah, we can waive parking, or we're gonna whatever that kind of thing is in our wheelhouse. If you're talking about updating the UBC code or working on the code, that's the Building Appeals Board. And so I understand your natural inclination to want to weave them in, because really, honestly, that's really more there. I mean, my department has 3 different, boards that we do, including the city council. And so we're responsive to them. So I would have to represent them as I am right now, telling you that they would probably, you want to separate your area and what you're looking for, sustainability, and what they're looking for, because they are also approaching updates on codes and things of that right now. That's what they're working on right now. So, just so we're kind of keeping the mission straight here. And of course, as Matt says, you could always approach Planning Commission, city council about, modifying that mission, but we do, because we do represent three different boards and, two commissions and one board, we're staff to them, so we're obligated, to them as much as we are to you to explain what their mission is and what your mission is.
A point to consider, if the goal was to do that holistic approach, looking at all the green building aspects, including sustainability, including zoning and the building code, then I would recommend creating a subcommittee, unfortunately, that would be 2 members of the Building Appeals Board, 3 of the Planning Commission. Then they could bring in all the public experts that would be relevant to the discussion, because it would be open and public and noticed. You could have the fuller discussion that it sounds like you're looking to have in that kind of a setting with council blessing.
So what did the rest of you think about all this?
I'm thinking initially, I like your idea of just keep it informal at first and have that discussion, and then I think naturally you're going to arrive at the place where you need to be, whether that's a subcommittee or a subcommittee.
Yeah, I think their
Versus just jumping off the diving
Yeah.
board right now into a subcommittee. in
their
10
clarification
minutes.
was very helpful.
Yeah.
And, so I agree with Steve, is that, if that ad hoc committee, which would be just members of the planning commission, correct? Yes. You can go so far with that, and maybe the determination is at some point when you can really see what it's turning into, make that.
Yeah, because Councilmember Wyrick also, he emailed all of us, or we got the email about this. I didn't get too deep into it, but the state is mandating by 2017 some form of this, some incarnation of. Yeah, so Ojai needs to update this aspect or create an aspect of the general plan, so it probably will take a more formal
Eventually, yeah.
incarnation. Okay, therefore, so what do we do now? What do I do now?
Is anybody interested in joining?
in joining you.
Great, that would be,
And I think that, because in the informal nature of that suit us well, we can kind of see and prepare materials. Stay on annoying cough.
I feel for you.
okay, so do we need council approval for this ad hoc? See, it was my impression that no, that, I feel like I've been going round and round, that I don't
Should be able to-
understand.
We should be able to form an ad hoc committee.
Right.
Within our
Planning
board.
Commission.
We don't need permission from somebody else to do that.
The Planning Commission has the power to form an ad hoc committee of itself. If it would like staff support from that, it may be useful to have the city council's blessing, which would come with it staff time, support, et cetera. That would be recommended for your consideration.
From what I understand, the city council's already given that blessing. I've heard them say that. Yeah,
No,
so-
they have, yes, they have given their blessing, but they have not formalized it as an agenda item,
Well, we can,
right? I mean, that's
when Randy gets up here, we'll drill him on that one.
that's been
Can I
my-
make a suggestion that before going to city council, keep it, again, informal with the two of you or whoever else, and have this discussion between yourselves and really build your case up.
Yeah, I
And
agree, I
then-
agree.
Then we can, so when we go to city council, we want to know our direction
Yeah,
and where
we
we're
want our-
going. Let's be solid ground when we do that, rather than just throwing it out there tonight.
In the subsequent discussions we have, can we come to either of you, Matt or Kathleen, for questions? Or does that need to be blessed by city council? If this is an ad hoc committee of the planning commission.
With regard to my time, if I get a request from a single commissioner or an ad hoc committee to analyze an issue that does not present an issue of great peril that requires immediate action, I route that request to the mayor and the city manager for evaluation. They're the gatekeepers to my time, because my time means budget. The exception, of course, is the great peril. If you have an immediate problem, please call me and we'll fix it, like a
What-
conflict issue.
Yep.
But they are the gatekeepers for this kind of a forward-looking expenditure of time. I can't speak to how Kathy allocates her time. And I'd be happy to work with you with that approval, of course. I just don't have the ability to give it to you directly.
So I'm going to chime in and say I agree with what Chair Foster's saying. I think that if you work the two of you together and you come up with an agenda of what you want, a work plan, an agenda, and how you see that, going forward in the next year and what you'd like to accomplish, then I think we can take that forward, and you just have a little bit more detail in there about, what the goal really is. Because right now it's a really global goal. And if you're going to refine it down to that you want to start initially, this general plan update, which is something the planning commissioners would be tasked with doing, eventually going up to city council for approval. That's something that you would normally do and staff would normally do. Then I think you just need to put that together. And then, the general plan, I haven't seen it. I've been too busy to read on it, but I know what you're talking about. But generally, like with if it's a new element in the general plan addressing sustainability, then you would have goals and policies, and it would have take a lot of time to get to that point if we didn't hire a consultant. Okay. But I just really think you need to put some more parameters on it.
Okay, then in order, as far as communications with the planning commission, how do we handle that? So say Chester and I or whoever else we're talking, and then I guess for updates, we would just maybe possibly agendize these things as needed?
We would probably agendize
at the end of the meeting? Yeah,
with all the other ones were,
right.
Yeah.
Subcommittee reports.
Or in this case, ad hoc.
Okay,
Mm-hmm. But just to answer your question, Matt can probably speak to this, but he was very clear in saying less than a quorum that can be on the ad hoc. So again, you can't, sorry, what?
The membership can't change.
Right, and then you also can't, as they call it, wag and wheel them in, that type of thing.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so
make sure that, it's like any other Brown Act that you're speaking of, once you start talking to somebody and then that person talks to somebody, you know how it works.
Okay, so are we clear? Is there?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's going to be agendized at the end of every meeting. So just like we're doing our reports, it goes to, you to give a report and go from there. And that's how we, keep it current. Okay. At some point when you're ready to really propose something, that would be the moment to do it.
Okay. Is there at this point, in the early stages, is there anybody else that wants to be involved, or, or do you want to see how it flushes out? I don't want to.
I would love to be involved, but I know with Complete Streets, my time is taken. So I don't know if I could be like an alternate or.
Well, do you just want us to keep you abreast of what's going on at this point?
Yeah, if it's okay, if it's a legal thing to do that, I wouldn't. Yeah, and then if I could chime in, I could.
It is legal for Chester, Kathy, and I to, so we can talk and hang out, eat lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 commissioners can speak about any given item because 3 is less than 4, which is a quorum.
Okay.
With the caveat, of course, that if A, B, and C discuss an item, then C can't go and discuss that same item with D.
Right.
Right, okay.
Okay, so good. Is there anything else we got to discuss on this? Okay.
All right. Good. All
Thanks.
right. Director report and actions. Item 9.
Okay. Again, I'm open to any questions you might have, but there's just generally some sign permits, tree permits, and a couple of real minor director's exemptions, and I think some addresses, assignments to the second unit program. And, we had a lot of second unit applications towards the end, so you'll see probably a couple more of those address assignments probably, So I'm open to any questions if you have anything on that. If not, I will move on to the active code enforcement. And I don't really have anything specifically to report on it other than, as you know, or maybe you don't know, I'm not really sure, but coming forward to Tuesday's city council meeting will be the leaf blower ordinance, and if that is passed, you'll see this dramatically change as we probably will be working on, more actively working on leaf blowers we already have been at this point. So just, you know, if you see there's, in the case, there's a lot of vacant building issues and some leaf blower issues, but as it was pointed out, the code enforcement, one of the primary reasons the code compliance officer was hired was to do leaf blowers, so we'll probably be moving more towards that. And then finally, it's just your upcoming meetings, which would be the hospital coming February 3rd, the 417 Bryant Circle. If you've been out there, you've noticed that the what am I calling? Yeah, thank you. What am I calling? Trellises. And you asked them to come back and show you what the buildings looked like, and they've brought that in. We're going to agendize it. And then, what was the one we noticed today?
Oh, that we noticed today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I was going to bring up another thing, though, that I thought and I completely forgotten, I thought about it yesterday, was second units.
Yeah, that's what I was
I'm sorry.
We were going to bring it in February, but we didn't really say when. But
Yeah.
the one we noticed.
I don't think, I mean, with the hospital being moved
821
on,
Winery.
I just don't see it. I mean, you know, I could agendize it for February 3rd, and we can work on it, but,
17th's fine.
thank you. So I just wanted, we had a.
Anyway, I'm sorry, the winery is the one we noticed
The
today.
other thing was, the other one we noticed was the winery. They've got some modifications going, and they're under construction right now. So we're trying to, you know, we're extremely inundated with work right now. If anybody's been into our lobby, you'll see there's quite a wait almost throughout the day. But we want to try to move these things where people are still under construction and keep them working as they request often of us. So we're trying to fold those things in, even though they know it's a long day. Also, the other thing that we have going is on February 3rd is the Sarasota Park specific, I don't know what you want to call it, specific plan is what they're calling it? Yeah, and it's needs to come before the planning commission for your feedback, and then it's going to city council, or it went to city, I'm not really sure. It's something that Greg Grant is requesting of us, and so we told him that he could come to that meeting and hopefully get it to you and get your feedback on it, because it's something the city has a grant for. So we're trying to fold these things in and still maintain a reasonable meeting length for you. But it is difficult right now, as there is a lot of work and a lot of demands. So with that, I just think that I will mention that we're trying to move forward the Mountain Vista Manor modifications, which is the second from the bottom. They have some corrections they need to give to us, and we're trying to move them forward. And we will be moving forward the cottages among the flowers, I believe, for an extension on the 17th of February also. So you expect the next couple of agendas to be rather intense, because we just got a lot of stuff out there right now.
Okay.
So are you saying that, you know, the February 3rd is a given, and you're saying just because February 17th and March 2nd is blank, that it doesn't mean there's not a ton of things that are going to happen there?
No, I'm trying to say that as when we do this agenda item, we do it, it was done last week before your meeting, and subsequent to that, these people are coming in, like we've met with the cottages among the flowers people, they're constantly submitting things, and as they get complete for processing and we have staff time available to take them, we're trying to get them on the agenda. We just never know when someone's going to actually complete their application.
Gotcha.
I mean, you know, some of these applications that had 4 and 5 incomplete letters, so we never know when they're actually going to get all the materials together.
The reason I'm asking is because I've been, I'm aware of a name, Dan Fitzpatrick, who headed the ordinance in Fresno, who's coming down to Ojai to prepare a PowerPoint presentation for the second dwelling conversation that's going to continue at some point. And they're wanting to know when that's going to happen.
You guys, you can place them on the February 17th agenda, but as it is normal protocol for, in most planning departments, applicant-sponsored projects would be public hearings and would take precedence, so the discussions would be at the end of the meeting, if, you know, and the meeting would go over
Right.
how long you guys wanted to do that.
Right, and that's, well, I don't know how to plan that. You're the one who knows more of that inside than us.
Well,
They're just, and I don't care when it is, they're just, I guess it's kind of hard, it's hard to pick, because you don't know what's gonna.
It's hard for me
I hear
too,
what you're
because,
saying, right.
I think the hospital is a rather important project to the city, and it's rather complex. I think it's going to take the better part of the night for you to get through that project.
Yeah, on the 3rd.
And so then the next one, the 17th, you'll have some issues with, both the Mountain Vista Manor and Cottages Among the Flowers. You might just power right through them, or you may not. I don't know. And so I think you can go ahead and put it on the 17th, and it may be late. And, I mean, you've seen city council do this. They'll just say, well, they continue.
10:30.
It's on there, and
I don't really want to do that, but I guess
Well,
there's,
what,
I mean,
yeah, why don't we just put it to the next one after the
yeah,
17th?
that's fine, whatever it
And
is, yeah.
Maybe we can possibly let the Cottages Among the Flowers and the Manor folks know. I mean, maybe we get a phone call and just say, look, if you're not ready by the 17th, then, or you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, we have this specific agenda item on our March 3rd item. It's,
I think that you may be able to do this PowerPoint on the 17th. I mean, the modification for a Mountain Vista Manor is rather minor, and the cottages is going to be a request for an extension, but it may not go that
Yeah,
way.
right.
It's hard for me to tell. Some projects that don't appear to be
Yeah,
controversial end up controversial.
Right, and it's the same thing, yeah, it could be any week. I mean, today I thought the agenda was kind of light, and it was. We had a lot of opportunity to talk about a lot of things, but it wasn't real pressing. So
right.
what do we do? If
So
we
I
Choose March
would
2nd,
just
that could be
recommend-
flooded with stuff to do,
I think we picked the 17th.
And is that what you want for the second residential ordinance? That's the next thing you want is a PowerPoint on.
And this presentation
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that, if we're all in
Okay.
agreement. I think we are. Mhm.
Okay. For the 17th.
Okay. Let's see, where does that leave us? Report on current code enforcement, you covered that. Future agenda items, that's where we just were. So now Planning Commission committee reports. Commissioner Merck, the city council meeting of January 12th, did you?
I attended the meeting on the 12th,
Mhm.
and it was a pretty interesting meeting. It went about 4 hours. This was after we had had our previous meeting where we had the joint meeting. They started at 7, they went until about 11. There were a number of interesting items that came up. One was on the consent calendar. They actually did discuss commissioner, the terms of commissioners and how those get renewed and so on, and they continued that to a future meeting. So it's going to come up at another city council meeting. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of track that and see what it is they're discussing there. Kathy was excited because they approved the historic preservation agreement for 307 Aliso, which was, I guess there was a lot of work involved in that. There was a interesting discussion about fees for using Libby Bowl, which there was a meeting actually last night here in City Hall that was pretty interesting. There were over 50 people attended it, and they had a kind of concept discussion about how to use Libby Park, what's the best use for it, how can the city make that happen. I highly recommend anybody that wants to watch the tape of it or anything. It was a very interesting meeting. And all that feedback went to Rob Clark, and then the city's going to come back with some ideas about how to actually manage the bowl. The big discussion item was vacation rentals, and there was a lot of discussion about it. You might have seen headlines in the paper about Ojai prevents vacation rentals. Really, the upshot of the discussion was, we're going to leave everything the way it is. We already have an ordinance in place that says vacation rentals are illegal. We actually have a CUP, and that's what the city council decided to stick with. And then there was a report from our clerk about the second unit compliance program, which I thought was really interesting. So they've had 32 applications for the amnesty program. and 9 of those have been approved so far. I was surprised that there were that many applications, because this program's been in place for about 5 years, and we've had 3 or 4 people come forward, so all of a sudden at the end. So the whole amnesty program expired on December 31st. So these 32 applications came in right at the last minute, which was pretty interesting. There was an agenda item to waive the public art requirement for the Ojai Valley Athletic Club. They are putting in these solar panels, and they've gone over the $300,000 limit, so they're required to put in public art. And they came to the city council and said, oh, can't we just pay an in lieu fee and put some art someplace else? And the city council referred that to the arts committee, and I hope the arts committee will be very strict with them. And they also discussed, there was a whole discussion at the very end of the meeting about the Murata Petroleum application in Upper Ojai, which is outside the city, but it's within the Ojai area plan. And Paul Blatz's comment was, at least give us the right to comment, then the county can ignore our comments and go on with whatever they want to do. But it was discussed. And it was a very interesting meeting.
It sounds like. Complete streets, Commissioner Nolan, you're saying you want
Yeah, I usually give the report at the beginning of the month, and that's when we meet. So I'll do that at beginning of February.
Okay. And evidently, there wasn't a MAC meeting, so Commissioner Jagiello had nothing to attend that evening, right? So that would move you forward to the next pending meeting. Well, it says no report, MAC meeting, January 18th was commission. Commissioner Jagiello? Am I reading that wrong? I'm reading on 3 of 3 on the agenda. They still have your name on there.
I'm looking at the chart at the end.
Things,
Yeah,
Supposed to be at the last one?
let's see here.
Nobody reports.
January 6th was canceled. You were scheduled for the 6th.
Okay, so I'm now scheduled for the 15th.
Well,
According
we
to
were
Tom.
doing this flow chart differently than we were doing, because I was told at the last meeting to not move the name down, just go to the next person.
Okay.
So I was just following what you guys told me to do last time, because I was doing it that other way.
Okay, well,
wait, do it the other way.
we can do that. Yeah, it simplifies it rather than shifting names. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Chester's up for it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll go, but I see that Lawrence is next,
Right,
right? Okay, so one different.
right. So, we're clear on that. There was no Babs meeting. Coming up the 27th, okay, and Rosalie's scheduled to attend that one. Okay. All right. That takes care of our, oh, then we have the sustainability, actually item was underneath there, and we've had that conversation already. So that leads us to Councilmember Randy Haney to address the commission. Welcome.
You know, I wanted to start out by saying, hello, planners. I was sitting back there going, that's a nice way of saying good evening. First of all, I wanted to say I attended my first breakfast meeting, and I enjoyed it. I found it, well, let's put it this way. There wasn't anything done there that anyone has to worry about. There wasn't much public there, but it wouldn't have mattered. There wasn't anything going on that we had to hide or you felt you had to hide. I thought the questions were excellent. I thought the way Kathleen talked about the issue coming before you tonight on the, what was the long to, the building next to Bonnie Lou's? 334, thank you.
Okay.
That was the biggest issue. Everything else was being put back. I had tons of comments on that, but I said this morning that I don't think it's my responsibility as a council member to talk to that. I think mine is to listen to watch you folks debate it and discuss it and provide feedback. Because who knows, somewhere down the line, it may come back to us as a council. And I want to hear, but I don't want to be a part of the conversation until it reaches that level. So a lot of points were made tonight, which I thought were good. And that's all I'm going to say to that, because I said I wouldn't comment. The only, regarding all the things here, ad hoc committees, because I've sat on a couple of them, and like we're on the ad hoc committee for the cultural resources, and it's been ongoing for a good 7-8 months. So be careful what you get into, and keep it simple. And you guys were talking about it at a beginning and an end. I would definitely state the date you're going to start it, and state the date you want to end it. And then that gives you something to do in between. And I'm not sure if you want to come back every week and comment about what you're doing in it. Probably once a month, maybe once every 2 months, something of that nature, because you're going to be gathering a lot of information. You're going to be sharing it amongst yourself, and then you want to be able to come here and express it in a manner that everyone can comprehend it. So if you give yourself a little more time, it's going to be easier to do that. Ad hoc committee versus subcommittee, that's your choice, and I enjoyed the fact that Matt, that you clearly explained the differences between the two. Again, don't think I know everything, because I'm sitting back there taking notes too. But it was a good explanation, and I hope it helped you clarify what your goal should be. I also like the part when he was separating a building appeals board and what their guidelines are and what your guidelines are. And if you're going to commingle, you might want to bring that to the council. Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk to is and I did it last year. I remember this clearly. Is our code enforcement. I think there's a typo on page 1. I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th item down. It says 10/12/02. Okay, I just wondering if that was, when I saw 02, I went, we've had I wouldn't think so.
Long.
Okay, so that was the first thing I just went, okay, well, I'm sure I'll bring that up, we can clarify that. But, again, I like the format. We got the street name, we got the complaint, we've got the status, and I don't understand the date. Is the date column something that represents that's the last time it was reviewed, that was the last time it was looked at, it's settled? I wasn't sure what that was, and then I wasn't sure what the coloring is on mine. I've got some, what color is that, you guys?
Peach.
Peach? Peachy. Peach, and then another one's the peach didn't come out, so then it becomes dark gray. But does that represent something too? I wasn't sure.
Peach are city council, and the gray are closed cases.
No, I think you mean city attorney. So,
So I see one that says referred to city attorney, but the very top one, for instance, 3/21/12, has a date, with the status being the city attorney.
I think that's the date it was sent to the city attorney.
Okay, that was the
Correct,
date it was
Sherry?
sent. Okay.
So I
So
think
anything that's in
that the column that says date really should say notes. It's like additional notes. It really should say notes up top.
Okay.
Because it's just for reference to, so just so that you know, this is a much more detailed Excel spreadsheet. And because of the confidentiality of some things with the code case,
Right.
we condense it.
Okay.
And that's why I think that that's an error that needs to be fixed. When we, in the course of our business day, we have the full width of the Excel spreadsheet. So I think we need to make sure that says notes and that what's going on, check, like we've got this tickler on here, like check up on this case, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're kind of
Right.
work product.
Okay. Like I said, I just wanted a clarification.
Yeah,
on it
that's what it is.
Because I remember the first year I looked at this, there was no clear understanding of it. There's a lot more clarity now, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think, unless you don't have any questions for me.
Cultural resources, is that getting back on the agenda for the public to start to weigh in on?
It's actually, I'm glad you asked that. We're having a meeting tomorrow night. We were set to go to council next week regarding ministerial permitting, and we were thinking about turning some of those into discretionary. And now we've come to the conclusion that we're going to come back to city council and get a little more guidance. I'm not, it's as to the extent of what we want to do with cultural resources and the pause and just all the elements that come into it. So we're going to go back next Tuesday and let the city council have a little more discussion about it, have a little more direction to the ad hoc committee. And then I believe at that point, we're going to be ready to actually have another community meeting because we do need some more input. And the good thing about the input coming at this time is the fact that there's more public awareness and there's been more interactive involvement from contractors, homeowners, real estate agents, from everyone in the community. So it'll be a good time to get some good feedback before we bring this thing to a climax. So
not next Tuesday, you're saying? That
next
wouldn't be-
Tuesday, we're going to discuss it as a city council body. We're going to get some clarity as to the direction. I don't know how much more I want to discuss about that.
The other point you might note is that the council will, of course, take public comment at the Tuesday meeting on all items on the agenda, including that item on the agenda. So it's not a workshop format, it's a regular council meeting with the council at the front, the public at the back, but there will be the opportunity for public comment. So
Sure.
any
So-
members of the public, including the commissioners who are interested in the item, should feel free to come to the council and comment. And the council will consider that as they evaluate the range of options and where they
So-
want to give guidance to the ad hoc committee.
So this is what I can help you with as far as an ad hoc committee. You start in the beginning with a clear, concise focus as to what you want to achieve, and 7 months later, all of a sudden you're way out here discussing all of these additional concerns, and now you're getting ready to finish, and you're saying to yourself, boy, did we talk about all the concerns? Do we have clarity on all of these concerns? And are we really achieving the goal of the council's direction on this ad hoc committee? So that's why we went from here to here, and now we're going to bring it back to here. And, we've got an excellent committee. We've got bright, intelligent people, experts in their field, and good people. So if we get the clarity that I'm looking for from the city council, I believe we're going to be able to move within probably the next two city councils meetings and have this almost wrapped up. So somewhere in between there, Rosalie, I'd really would like to have another public session, kind of like what we had last night here for the Libby Bowl. In fact, it was perfect. We set up chairs. We reversed this where we weren't speaking, the public wasn't speaking to the council or speaking to a higher up. Rob Clark stood over here and held the discussion. He did a great job. Steve McCleary did a great job helping him. And it was very informal and very constructive. So that's my sense of where we need to go one more time and then come back to the committee and actually try and finish this up. So we're not far from it, but we do need more public input.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I hope I probably could have said that real quickly at the beginning, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting process, to say
It
the
is,
least.
and I'm on the Libby Bowl committee too. There's 18 people involved in that. So, there's 7 of you, and it took, 6 tonight. And it took you how long to kick around one line item? And so, like I said, add 8 or 9 more people to that and watch how that works. So, but we're looking forward to that. And again, that's a good committee with really, really good people on it. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. Any further discussions? Meeting adjourned.